Today I'll be taking you through a little demo. We'll go through our procurement and AP solution. What you see here is a large dashboard with all kinds of insights. I'll come back to that. I'd like to start with a bit of insight into the actual process. This is where the technology comes in. What you see here at the top is statistics about the solution that we have, the data that actually gets loaded into this solution. So we see 10,000 supplier invoices in this case with a value of 700 million. And the far right, as you can see here, there's all kinds of filters that we can apply across the data. These filters would apply anywhere. So I can select, say, I'm only interested in my domestic suppliers. That would get applied and get filtered throughout the dashboard. What you see in the middle is an automatically generated process flow. So this is literally from the transactional data from your system. And what we currently see is 12% of all the cases that we have in the data, which represents 1,200 invoices. So that's the actual numbers that you see here. And anything that can be found in the data we can include. We can now increase the number of variants in the process, and you can immediately see what's happening. So currently we're showing 25% of all the transactions. Let me pull up the process path selector or variant selector, and here we can see all these different variants coming in. By adding additional paths, we can see a more interesting view of the business process. So let me select that. I've got currently here, you see complexity coming in. I'm currently showing 45% of all the transactions that we have and all the different paths that are followed. From here, we can start analyzing and picking up interesting, unusual paths, events, or bottlenecks in the business process. Let me zoom in a bit. Let me select here approve purchase order item, and I select all the ones where the approval hasn't happened. So I'm excluding that. So now we can see path where we are missing the purchase order approval. And I'm interested to see that in combination where we actually have a purchase order. So I'm selecting purchase order, and I'm interested in the ones that we manually created, not if there's already a contract or a requisition in place. So what I've currently selected is where it flows through create PO item manually, and there is no approval for that specific PO item. What we see now is the 794, in this case, invoices where the purchase order didn't follow through the approval. Again, I can increase the path so you can see different flows happening. But what is probably most interesting if I jump to the spend dashboard, and in the spend dashboard, you can immediately see, okay, where is this actually happening? So we can see here, for example, recruitment services. I can select recruitment services, and you can immediately see the suppliers that show up, or I can directly select the main supplier. So when I select that, you can now see we got 25 documents where we had that are based on a purchase order, but the approval is missing. For this, I can jump to the case details, and here you can see the specific 25 documents with all the details with it. What is interesting is I can also see all the paths that these invoices went through. So if I go to the event details, I can select a particular document, and you can see here the specific steps or events that happened in the process. And what is immediately showing up is I've got quite a few where there is a changed supplier master data. Let me select that and actually see what's happening. So what I can see here is that Tiffany on the 2nd of December changed this particular supplier. I can jump back to the process flow, and we can see that also happening here where this step change supplier master data is happening. So these are some of the interesting insights that we can get. What I'll do now is I'll jump into another example. Let's start with removing the filters. Look at another scenario. I'll drag in a little bit more. And now I'm interested to see where we've got a supplier invoice being issued before we actually create the purchase order in the system. I select that particular path, and filter for those. And what we can see here, there's 555 documents, but currently the filter is showing where the supplier invoice is issued and directly followed by the creation of the purchase order. I don't mind if it's directly followed or at any time followed, so I select that. And this gives me 1026 documents where we can see there was a supplier and a date on the actual invoice before we created the purchase order in the system. And of course, this is a risk because we might have made a commitment to that particular supplier before we actually had the approvals. We can look at the days it took to between when that the document date on the invoice and when the PO was actually created in the system. And this is where you can further drill down into exactly find out what's the root causes of this and if there's certain people involved. All right. Instead of selecting through the process flow, we also have the option to just look for particular events of interest. So I might be interested to look at where we've canceled goods receipt. So I can select that here, and the process gets updated to everywhere where we have an activity for cancel goods receipts. Again, I can drag in a little bit more of the business process to find out what's happening. And what you see happening here is there's also changes being made to the purchase order. So we see quantities being changed, values being changed, and that might be something of interest to really find out, okay, where is that happening and why are we doing that? Obviously, I can select this where we now also have the change purchase orders. I can jump to my event details to find out exactly where that has happened and find the people involved. Let me take this out and go back to my process. Because there's another way how we can look at this. Instead of directly going to the particular people involved in those events, we can also go to our efficiency dashboard. And here you can find out, for example, what document types were involved, the type of, or where it's happening, and what business units, what products. And we can even go beyond because we can also find particular suppliers where we have more automation applied or more rework activities. And what we've done here is we've applied or indicated where it's automated, and automated means the activity is performed by a system or an interface or batch account. And rework activities are things like cancellations or changes to existing documents. And what we can do here is we can find out, for example, we have supplier here Bunnings where we see a high automation rate of events. But if you see supplier here Toyota, or I pick supplier BP, where there's a lot of rework activities happening. This is really where the power comes in, because you can find out exactly where this is coming from and if it's particular suppliers or particular users where that's happening. Let me do one more. I'll go back to the process flow and let me increase this a little bit, and let's have a look at payments. So what you see here is we have invoices being paid late, after due date, being paid on time or before due date, or early. What we can do is we can change this to the number of days. And we can see here that invoices that are being paid late on average take 28 days versus the ones that are paid early take on average 15 days. I can also change this to median days, and you see the impact is even bigger. There's a lot of invoices that are booked in the system and paid directly in the next payment run. We can have a look at where that's happening and perhaps find out what's driving some of that. Again, I can go to the dashboard to find out what suppliers are involved, but let me first start with adding a couple of activities to it. And we can see something happening here where there's changes being made to the supplier master data. Let me select where that's actually happening. And again, pull in a little bit more, and we can see, for example, changes being made to the supplier master data just before the payment gets processed. You can select those. And what we have now is 5 documents where there was an invoice being booked in the system, then someone made a change to the supplier master data and then processed the payment. I can go to my case details. I've got the 5 documents here. I can always export this to Excel to do any follow-up work. And I can go here to my events to find out exactly who were involved in all these activities. And I'm especially interested to see what happened with changes being made to that supplier just before the payment got processed. I select that and I can see here the people who are involved in this. It looks like there's 2 changes being made from different companies. Let me jump back to the spend dashboard to see, okay, there's 2 suppliers here, Officeworks and Stockland, where this has happened. That gives quite a bit of insight into what kind of things are involved here, and if they're particular people or whether it's something else that needs to happen, if it's certain business units where we got to make changes or certain suppliers where we might need to reach out to see what can be improved. Another way of looking at this is by going to our user dashboard, and in the user dashboard we can see exactly who's been doing what. Remove all the filters. You can see here on the right side the different activities that we've got in this process flow. So we can select, okay, who's actually been changing supplier master data, and by selecting here we can immediately see on the left side who were the people involved in changing supplier master data. And immediately there's certain people that you might not expect. So we see here someone in finance who's made a change or 8 documents, one event. You can see here someone in procurement, or there's actually another person here in finance as well who've been changing master data. So you can see and follow up, okay, is this what you would expect that these people are performing these activities? Now, what might be of interest is to what extent this is in combination with other activities. So I'll remove the filter and let me find those particular people. So we had Tiffany, for example. Okay, if I select Tiffany, it looks like she's only changing supplier master data. So maybe she's not in procurement, but in the master data team. I can select here Thomas, and I can see some other activities, or I can select Mark. And Mark is an interesting one, because if I select user Mark, you can see here he's been involved in a lot of different activities, and you can see everything displayed here on the right. Changing, creating master data, requisitions, invoices, payments, pretty much anything. And of course, this might raise some concerns now, especially where those activities are related. And for that, we can actually have a look at our supply or our segregation of duties dashboard. And in the segregation of duties dashboard, we've included a number of specific key risk indicators, KPIs or KRIs, that highlight those combination of activities. So if we select here, for example, who's been involved in changing supplier master data and creating invoices, we can see here, Mark has been doing that, and we can go to the detail and find out here what has actually happened. It were 2 invoices related to Allianz. In this dashboard, there's these KRIs that I'm showing here are actually separate analytics routines that we ran in order to provide further details. And that is really powerful to bring full insight into what's happening in the business process. I can go to, for example, suppliers, and here I can see specific key risk indicators with regards to supplier master data. I can show here, for example, if we have any potential duplicate suppliers based on the ABN number. And here I can see who they are. So for whatever reason, we have 2 CBAs in our system. We have 2 Woodsides in our system, Infosys. So these might be particular things that you might want to look into and follow up. We remove the filter. Similar if we go to our KPIs or KRIs in purchase orders. So we might be interested in potential split POs. So this might be where someone has a delegation of authority limit of, say, 50,000, and instead of putting through a one purchase order of 80,000 that they can't approve, they might put through 2 below 50K in order to have it approved themselves. You can select that and immediately find out, okay, those were the 509 purchase orders where this has happened. For all these KRIs, which is completely flexible, we can configure it how you want it. And you can also whitelist, for example, what you might think, okay, this is expected for this particular supplier or this transaction or this user where this happened, so you don't get things that you don't necessarily need to follow up. In addition, we've got alert functionality, and with alert functionality, you can, for any of these type of KRIs, we can automatically send out an email or an SMS based on certain criteria. We then bring this together in a overview dashboard. And in this overview dashboard, you get an overall view of how the process is running across your suppliers, requisitions, orders, all the way through to your payments and potential segregation of duty conflicts, where we got areas where we need to follow up, but also how we're tracking over time. And you might see, based on improvements that you implement, a decline in the results that you get here.